All right, everybody, so welcome back to another episode of Colton Posey Fishing. Today we're going to be going over my top 5 casting baits. And before we do, you know the drill. If the video helps you at all, make sure to hit that thumbs up button. It's a great way to help support the channel. Subscribe down below. I got you covered every week when it comes to bass fishing. And comment if you ever have any questions, anything you want to add, or you just want to talk fishing. I love hearing from you guys. So these baits are kind of going to cover, kind of like my finesse baits, they're kind of going to cover from the top all the way to down deep. So and when I say deep, 15 plus feet. These baits kind of work just anywhere you are, whether you're fishing a river system, a lake, it doesn't really matter, a creek or a pond, whatever the case may be. These baits will work just about anywhere. So stay tuned, this is something you don't want to miss. All right, so let's start at the surface. So one of the first baits that I really like to throw this time of year is topwaters. I mean, you hear topwater, you know, throughout summer. And typically when you're on your lake or your river system, at times you'll see these fish come up and bust on shad or brim or whatever they may be feeding on. And one of the best topwater baits I've found personally, I think it's because they don't see this bait a whole lot, but that's gonna be the Papa Walker by Thunderhawk. If you wanna get your hands on these, check them out at Tackle Warehouse. Everything will be linked down in the description as always. But this topwater bait, it's different. It's got that fluke tail on the back of it, little rubber fluke tail type thing. The only thing that I've found that I'm not big about these baits, a lot of times the screws come out. So I suggest to take a screw out and put a little bit of Loctite on it and you know, just put it back in there. But anytime you buy these, they come with, you know, an additional fluke tail, but I've never had a problem like going through the fluke tails. It's just the screws really that's the issue. That plastic, I think, from getting hot and cold, it just backs that screw out. But what this bait does is it walks, it spits, sometimes it'll do a little dive and go right below the surface. It does a lot of different stuff, and it's just something I don't think the fish see a lot. And I usually get a crap ton of bites off this bait this time of year. It's a very fun bait to work. Also, it typically gets big bites. It's a pretty, you know, it's a pretty good sized bait. It's almost as big as my hand. So, you know, but typically when they bite this bait, they absolutely smoke it. Now, one of the biggest things I will say to put on the front of this bait, especially if you're using monofilament, make sure you put, you know, a clip on the front of it. What this does is it allows this bait to move a little bit more freely. If you don't, a lot of times what happens is, whether the wind's blowing or something like that, this bait's bad about diving. And sometimes that's good and a lot of times that's bad. It depends on what type of action you're trying to get out of the bait. So put that split ring on the front of it and I guarantee you'll get a lot more action out of the bait. It's a little bit easier to work, you'll get a lot more bites. So the next one, I've just had a ton of success off this so far this year. I mean, just it's been a really good year for this bait, but you know, that's a chatterbait. Now, this one right here is the Z-Man Evo. I finally got my hands on an Evo. I've had really good luck out of this, but one of the better ones that I've had a lot of good luck out of is the Bravalo custom lures. And you can get the Bravalo on VantageTackle.com, and if you head over there, use Colton25 and you'll get 10% off you know, your entire purchase. And save that code because anytime you go to purchase, you can reuse that code over and over again. But either way, what I'm doing is I'm mimicking brim. That's the main thing. You know, I've got a little bit of white in this, but it's kind of got that blue dinginess to it. It's got the chartreuse back, orange head, which is about knocked all the paint off the head. But I've got, you know, a green pumpkin freeloader on the back. I painted up the sides with that chartreuse like we talked about in a video a while back. And typically I'm making this bait erratic, okay? So what I'm doing is I'm throwing this bait out there, I'm reeling it kind of quick, I'm slowing it down, I'll pop it every now and again, then go back to a reel, you know, just doing a little bit different stuff, and I'm trying to keep that speed up. So with me trying to keep that speed up, one of the biggest things I can tell you is I'm either gonna throw that 3/8 ounce, typically on the calmer days, I'm gonna throw that 3/8 ounce. If I need more speed or I need more control over the bait because of the wind or something like that, then I'm gonna go with like that 1/2 ounce and stuff, but it's all the same concept. So, you know, 15-pound fluorocarbon, if you can get away with it, run braid, absolutely. I like running 30-pound braid on a chatterbait just because if I'm throwing up in that willow grass or anything like that, it typically cuts through that stuff a lot easier when I set the hook. So, you know, it's just kind of personal preference.
It was like 15 of them come up right here.
Really?
Yeah.
All of us in the sport of bass fishing are always looking for something to give us that edge, where it help us catch more fish, stuff like that, but we also want to do it in an affordable way, right? So one of the biggest companies I can tell you about right now is Vantage Tackle, okay? Vantage Tackle is an online retail site. Basically what he does is he sells custom built baits that are made from here in the U.S., from regular people like me and you who just love the sport of bass fishing. Hand quality care goes into every single bait. I can guarantee it because I've used just about everything that they got. But, you know, we're talking hand-tied chatterbaits, spinner baits, crankbaits, soft plastics, anything you can imagine. If you purchase anything over $100, you get free shipping, but also if you want to save some money, use Colton 25, you'll get 10% off. Helps me out a whole lot, helps those guys out a whole lot. Make sure to check me out at Colton Posey Fishing. Now the next one that I want to talk about, this is kind of going to pertain to those fish that are, you know, kind of in that 2 to, you know, 20 foot range. And that's going to be a lipless crankbait, but this time of year I like doing something a little different. This is actually a silent version. There's no rattles in this bait. It doesn't make any kind of rattling noise. And the biggest thing about this is with that silent, it's something that they don't see a whole lot, okay? You know, they get used to seeing these rattle traps as winter and early spring come in and stuff like that, and you catch a bunch of fish that way. But that's kind of like this time of year, jerk baits and, you know, rattle traps are not used a whole lot. When I say rattle traps, like, I understand it's a lipless crankbait, it's just a generic word that pretty much everybody that I know uses. What we call just about any bait that's a lipless crankbait a rattle trap. So, but either way, the silent rattle trap that I like to use, this is a Sergeant lipless crankbait made by Thunderhawk. Once again, everything will be linked down in the description, Tackle Warehouse. But you know, either way, it's just different. It's different. It's got that same action, but it's not loud and screaming, I'm over here. But one of the biggest things I like to do with this bait, I'll burn this bait, pause it, rip it, burn it again, you know, just making that bait real erratic, and typically it just triggers tons and tons of bite. It's just a fun bait to use. Plus, one of the biggest things about this one, it's got the 360 barrel swivel, so the hook will just keep going, and I don't lose near as many fish. And one of the cool things is I don't have to change the hooks out because it's already got the EWG hooks on it, and I just have a lot of good luck off of this bait. It's ready to run right out of the pack. Super good product, brim color, but you know, either way, check that out. So now let's say these fish move deep off a point or a ledge or something like that. I need to get down there to those fish. You know, the 6XD is a great one, the Rapala DT20 is a great one, but any type of deep diving crankbait, what I always suggest is run one that's going to run a little bit deeper than what you're fishing. So if I need to get down to, you know, 14 foot, then instead of running a DT14, I'm typically going to try to run a DT16, because one thing you'll notice if you run like 15-pound test or something like that, this crankbait sometimes has a hard time getting down there, okay? So, you know, you may have to run like a DT16. That's the reason a lot of us have like so many deep diving crankbaits, because some of them we want them to go deep, or you know, we want them scratching the ground. Some of them we just kind of want them to go right above the top of the fish. So it's kind of, you know, a mix in between. But, you know, just play around with it. Like I said, the line size is going to be a big determining factor, especially if you run monofilament float, so it can pull the nose of that bait up, stuff like that. But one of the biggest things about using this bait this time of year is speed kills, okay? Speed is absolutely everything when you're fishing a deep diving crankbait. When I can make a super long cast with that bait, I'm gonna put my rod tip in the water and I'm gonna burn this thing down as fast as I can until it hits bottom. When it does, I'm just gonna integrate pauses. I'm gonna slow down a little bit, then I'm gonna pick it back up really fast. If your arm is not burning after 5 casts like you just did a workout, you're not running this bait fast enough. But one of the biggest things that I can tell you, reel is going to be very important. You want a big spool size, okay, that way, because you're going to be making super long casts, but you want a lower gear ratio reel. Why? Because you get more torque when you set the hook on that fish and, you know, you're trying to reel it. You want that more torque. That way, you know, if you're fishing brush piles or something like that deep, you can get those fish to the boat. Your rod's going to be very limber, so, you know, you want a little bit of control over them, but not too much. Just the biggest thing is having that slower gear ratio where you have full control. You'll have a lot more torque, but also having your drag set properly. That's going to be one of the biggest things. Now, the other one that I really like to use, especially on ledges and especially if I'm fishing deep bridges, you know, fish are notorious during the summer getting on ledges on the river systems, and they're also notorious for getting on bridges, deep bridges, the bridge columns on your river system, or on your lake, I'm sorry, not your river system, but I mean, they will on your river system too, but lakes is a little bit more notorious. But one of my favorite things to do is a flutter spoon. A flutter spoon is an absolutely fun bite. Am I right or am I wrong? It's one of my favorite bites to get on. Now it's one of Spur Mountains Outdoors' favorite bites to get on. But, you know, I like throwing the Strike King Sexy Spoon. I think he throws the nickels. I know a bunch of people that throw the nickels. You know, use whatever brand you feel comfortable with. It's really just the bait itself that's the most important thing. But, you know, one of the biggest things I like doing, I know a lot of people say you want a big hook on your spoon, and that can be true. It depends on the instance, okay? So if I'm fishing a lake like Lewis Smith or some other lakes that I fish close to my home, I'm dealing with a lot of spotted bass. And spotted bass, if you're familiar, they don't have really big mouths, and a lot of times you want to go to smaller baits, smaller hooks. It's just a better all-around system to get those good hook sets and gets those fish in the boat. So one of the biggest things I like to do, I like putting a size 4 EWG hook on, you know, my Flutter Spoons. And the size 4, I haven't had any bad luck, you know, keeping largemouth or anything like that hung up with the size 4. So I kind of just keep it on all my spoons at all times, and I have a lot of really good luck with it. So, you know, but whether they're deep or, you know, if they're 10 foot deep, I mean, that's the cool thing about a Flutter Spoon. I can drop that joker all the way down to 50, 60 foot if I want to and work that bait, catch some stripes or catch spotted bass or catch largemouth. Or, you know, if the fish are like 6 to 8 foot deep, I can still keep that bait at that area. But one of the biggest things is when you're working that bait deep, you want to work it aggressive. So I'm going to pop that bait really hard, and it just gives a lot of action to that bait, and a lot of times it triggers those fish that really don't want to eat. If they're shallower, you know, maybe they're over deep water, but they're shallower, so anywhere between that 4 to, you know, 10 foot range, I would say, you know, I'm going to be popping that bait kind of aggressively, but I'm going to pay real close attention and try to keep that bait at that range. And you got to be careful popping it when it's shallow, because, you know, that spoon can come up and hit you or hit whoever's in the boat or hit your boat itself, you know, whatever's worse for you. But, you know, all 5 of these baits, they kind of just work anywhere, whether you're on the lake system or your river system, it doesn't really matter. But, you know, either way, guys, if the video helps you at all, make sure to hit that thumbs up button. It helps me out a ton. Subscribe down below. I got you covered every week when it comes to bass fishing. Comment if you ever have any questions, anything you want to add, or you just want to talk fishing. I love hearing from you guys. I'll see you next time.